Hello and welcome to Indus News, live from Islamabad. I am Munib Hamid and these are the headlines. In Afghanistan, President Ashraf Ghani has left for Tajikistan hours after Taliban fighters surrounded Kabul, awaiting what they said a peaceful transition. But now a Taliban spokesman says fighters have been ordered to enter the city to prevent looting. An Afghanistan government delegation is set to meet Taliban representatives in Qatar, where the transfer of power is likely to take place. Meanwhile, UK Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab and Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shami Qureshi have discussed the evolving situation over the phone. Kashmiris are observing India's Independence Day as Black Day in protest and rejection of its illegal occupation of the valley. The All-Parties Hurriyat Conference and other parties have called for a complete strike in their territory. Meanwhile, the protesting farmers in India are marking the day as a day of hope of liberation from Prime Minister Modi's rule. In Haiti, the death toll from a powerful quake that struck the country on Saturday has risen to 724, with over 1,800 injured. Rescuers are making efforts to find survivors. The 7.2 magnitude earthquake has rekindled painful memories of the devastating 2010 tremor that killed an estimated 300,000 people. Over 2 dozen Rohingya refugees are feared to have drowned after their boat sank in the Bay of Bengal while trying to flee a remote Bangladeshi island. Officials said 14 people have been rescued by fishermen and taken back to the island. The United States has reported over 212,000 new COVID-19 cases and nearly 1,400 deaths overnight. In Pakistan, 67 more people lost their lives to the virus and over 3,700 tested positive in the past 24 hours. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 4.3 million lives and infected over 207 million people so far. We'll take a short break and come back with the details. Welcome back. Now, in Afghanistan, President Ashraf Ghani has left for Tajikistan hours after Taliban fighters surrounded Kabul, awaiting what they said a peaceful transition. But now a Taliban spokesman says fighters have been ordered to enter the city to prevent looting. Now, an Afghanistan government delegation is set to meet Taliban representatives in Qatar, where the transfer of power is likely to take place. Meanwhile, United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab and Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shami Qureshi have discussed the evolving situation over the phone. An Afghan political delegation has also arrived in Pakistan to hold meetings on the country's peace process. Now, Pakistan has consistently reiterated its commitment to the Afghan peace process, saying there is no military solution to the conflict. And just to keep you updated on the latest on Afghanistan as the Taliban edges closer to taking control, the latest information we have for you is that Afghan President Ashraf Ghani has left the country as the Taliban edges closer to taking full control. And also, as we've said, Ashraf Ghani has left for Tajikistan hours after Taliban fighters surrounded Kabul, awaiting what they said a peaceful transition. But now a Taliban spokesperson says fighters have been ordered to enter the city to prevent looting. Now, an Afghanistan government delegation is set to meet Taliban representatives in Qatar, where the transfer of power is likely to take place. Meanwhile, United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab and Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shami Qureshi have discussed the evolving situation over the phone. Now, an Afghan political delegation has also arrived in Pakistan to hold meetings on the country's peace process. Now, for more on this, we have the senior journalist Sumaira Khan. Thank you very much, Sumaira. Now, the evolving situation in Afghanistan is concerning not just for Pakistan, but for the entire world. And as we have news for the reports now, the Afghan President Ashraf Ghani has already left Afghanistan for Tajikistan. How do you see the things panning out?
It was the moment I have started covering this Afghanistan issue. It was, I think I can easily span that the time frame. It was exactly 6 months ago, and the morale and the sentiment of people of Afghanistan, that was very high. That come what may, leadership of Afghanistan, they'll stand against the odds of Taliban. They'll stand against everything that comes against the sovereignty and dignity of Afghanistan. But today, I received many calls. I talked to my journalist friends over there. I talked to many diplomats over there. I spoke to even a lot of members of diplomatic corps in Islamabad, and I got a unanimous feeling from everyone that the responsibility does not fall solely on United States or any other member country, those who took part in any kind of resolute support mission, and ISAF and NATO, and the foreign invasion, if you talk about that, started on 7th October 2001 after the 9/11 incident. But today, masses in Afghanistan, the way they greeted Taliban at the Company Bazaar, Kabul Bazaar, at the Company Bazaar in Kabul province, right, moments after the capital of Afghanistan fell into hands of fell at the mercy of Taliban, I was just shocked while seeing the sentiments and the body language and the kind of posture of Afghan people towards Taliban. They greeted them, and they. Yesterday, when I was covering all the incidents and developments in Bamiyan and Maidan Wardag and Logar and Nangarhar and Asadabad, they were coming as a shock to everyone, not just to me. People started pelting stones at Humvees and Emrans and every military vehicle that was coming, that was going out of the city after surrendering to the Taliban. So altogether, it's a shock for the entire world that what is happening in Afghanistan, one after another. Provinces are falling like leaves. They just acted as autumn leaves. So even today, I was at the borders. I was covering the Torkham and Torkham Gate. Torkham Gate happened to be the biggest transit trade route between Pakistan and Afghanistan. And even there, when I saw those people who took over just a moments ago when I reached there, and they were cool, they were calm, they took over charge of every custom office, the port authority, the police central command, the intelligence offices, and starting with the governor's office. And I was, once again, I will use the word shock, that member of the parliament who got elected from Nangarhar province, he was sitting right there in Jalalabad, and he witnessed the entire ceremony of handing over Nangarhar province to the Taliban official, designated official, to the shadow governor. And that was Malik Faridoon moment. He was once very anti-Pakistan, but now I spoke to him just a while ago, and he was in all praises for Pakistan and Taliban. He said that, yes, we have learned our lessons, and we know that what is the true essence of a true leadership for any country. And his words were that Pakistan is blessed with the masses. They love their country, and I would add into the compliment that yes, Pakistan is blessed with everything that any sovereign and dignified country needs, be it anything. Civil military leadership, its masses, its armed forces, its civil society, it's like every chunk of the society. So I was relieved that it's coming from those people who once negated the very basic ideology of Pakistan and Afghanistan.
And obviously, Pakistan's stance, Sumera, has always been in helping Afghanistan achieve peace. And Pakistan has just reopened the Tokhum border, as you also mentioned, the crossing in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, the busiest commercial point of entry between Pakistan and Afghanistan for the transfer of goods and supplies, according to senior border officials.
Yeah.
What more information can you put into this?
Yes, when I was there, the moment I reached there, I talked to the custom officials over there who were present at that. Although coverages and there was, I didn't see any bulk of media personnel over there because things were evolving so fast and abrupt that I just tried to wrap it up over there. But I happened to talk to some officials, and they said that after the approval of government of Pakistan, they did not halt the transportation of goods, transit trade, the goods and the trade process, because it would halt things at so many levels that they won't be like, we won't be able to achieve that track of time that we lost right now. So we are resuming the trade, the transportation, but yes, due to COVID reasons and some other security reasons, we are not welcoming the influx of pedestrian crossings into Pakistan, specifically into Pakistan, because I didn't see anyone who wanted to cross into Afghanistan, honestly. But there were people gathered on the other side of the border, and one very interesting thing that I saw an influx of Afghan people were there. They were just standing in front of me on the other side of the border, and they were witnessing the switching and the replacement of that official green, black, and red Afghan flag with the white one that represents the Islamic Emirate of Taliban. And they were clapping for them, and they were rejoicing them, and then they hugged each other, they greeted each other. So this was the sentiment I saw there. And a few of the people, they wanted to talk to me, they shouted at me, and they wanted to convey a kind of a message to Prime Minister Imran Khan from the other side of the border, that please tell your Prime Minister to open these borders for us. We want to come to Pakistan. So this was quote-unquote their statements from the other side. And but yes, I witnessed that trade is resumed. It's just going as per the routine matter. So I would say that the routine matter is totally in place. The procedures are in place, but the pedestrian crossing is right now, it's not allowed for both sides, not to Pakistan and not to Afghanistan. And the Afghan side has been totally, completely, entirely taken over by the Taliban on that side.
Right, Sumera, you were at the Tokhum border, and as you have mentioned earlier, Pakistan and Afghanistan obviously share brotherly ties, and there is a love between the citizens of both sides. Now, you were there. Iran has set up camps at the border with Afghanistan for the future crisis, maybe of refugee crisis. Do we have any information about Pakistan setting up possible camps at the Tokhum or the borders with Afghanistan for major crisis, if they be?
That's a very valid question. I would definitely appreciate it because you asked this question. Yes, we have a bulk of information on this. Pakistan is definitely not in a mood to welcome the same influx we welcomed during the Soviet withdrawal time, because at that time, yes, we were handling our own issues at starting with a very basic level. We did not, we were not running any organization like NADRA, who was responsible, who was supposed to assemble each and every detail of every citizen and every person living in Pakistan. And there was no database registration system at that time. Right now, we are much equipped, we are much prepared, and we know how and where and when we have to deal with that influx. But right now, from the other side of the border, because I speak to the three spokesperson of the Taliban, Zabiullah Mujahid, Dr. Naeem, and Suhail Shaheen Saab. So they told us that we don't think so that a major influx from Afghan refugees is going to hit Pakistan borders, but it's up to the discretionary power of Pakistan. And Pakistan is of the view that yes, all the Afghans who are coming as a refugee now after this crisis, after Afghan President, I would rather say former President Ashraf Ghani, we are well prepared. We'll keep them in the buffer zones. They would not be allowed to roam around the settled cities like they were earlier invited to, because that had created, obviously, kind of a hassle for Pakistan in the years to come. and we are still facing that in terms of security matters. You better know it. So this time they'll be kept alongside the border areas. I can name 6 places: Kharlachi, Badini, Torkham, and Chaman border, and Angurada. There is another Ghulam Khan. Yes, these 6 legitimate border crossings will be considered to keep all these refugees intact in a buffer zone or camps. And those who are living in Pakistan already, there was one extra measure for those. I would like to enlighten you on that as well. Pakistan authorities specifically issued instructions to the cyber authorities, to the cyber department of Pakistan, that any kind of account that was creating or generating anti-Pakistan content, staying at within the Pakistani borders, they should be dealt as well, because now there is no room for to have a soft corner for those who are living in Pakistan under the identity of Afghan refugee, and they are creating campaigns, disinformation campaigns against Pakistan.
Absolutely, Sumaira Khan. There is no room for misinformation now, as the situation is evolving for Pakistan and Afghanistan. Sumaira Khan, senior journalist, thank you very much for your time on Indus News. Now, to talk more on this, we have been joined by Muayyad Jafri, senior journalist also. Now, Muayyad, welcome to Indus News. Now, as reports are coming that Taliban fighters have entered Kabul, arguing that they were doing so because Afghan government security forces had abandoned their posts in parts of the city.
Yes, basically what we're looking at is a strategy by Taliban under the current circumstances, where they are not looking to engage in a conflict when it comes to Kabul, because they have very clearly laid it out right from the word go that they're not interested and they will not be taking Kabul by force. Now, surrendering if a particular force in Afghanistan, the Afghan Defense Forces, if they surrender or if they give up their post, that does not equate to taking a particular post by force. Now, I'd like to add to this, that this particular strategy is a strategy of a Taliban which the world is getting to know now. For those who see this particular victory of the Taliban or the takeover, whatever the West might want to call it, as similar or even the same as the one in the past and during the Soviet era, are clearly mistaken, because we now see a Taliban which are not just militarily more organized, but they are politically very aware. They care about global legitimacy. They have been engaging in dialogue, not just only with the US and with the Kabul government when it comes to intra-Afghan talks, but also with other global powers. If you've been following Zabiullah Mujahid or Sohail Shaheen or other people who represent the group, they've been regularly meeting with representatives from the European Union. They've been regularly meeting with representatives from the Central Asian countries, so on and so forth. So the Taliban will not be doing anything right now, from what we have seen, that would jeopardize their legitimacy when it comes to international recognition. So this particular move also signifies the fact that they would move forward if there is no resistance. But when it comes to conflict, they will not do anything, as it appears, that will create a problem where it appears that they're taking Kabul by force.
Right, Jafri, it's clear that Taliban is not taking Kabul by force. And also in the past week, we haven't seen Taliban not taking anything by force, rather it's just coming into their laps. Now, you've talked about international recognition. Let's talk about international recognition. Obviously, as the Taliban are set to come in power, maybe tonight, the day after, or a week later, but eventually they are to set foot in the presidential palace as the government of Afghanistan. How do you see how important is international recognition for the Taliban? Obviously, Britain has already said this a few weeks back, that they are ready to work with the Taliban government. And also today there is an emergency Security Council meeting going on, which Russia has convened on the emergency situation in Afghanistan. How do you think, how is the international community going to react to the new Taliban government?
I think there's one thing that needs to be understood very clearly right now. There's a lot of fog when it comes to the situation. Everybody's focused on how Kabul will be taken. The major sticking point in all of these negotiations was the form of government in Afghanistan, where the Taliban were adamant on the fact that they would want to establish an Islamic emirate. Whereas the West, as we all know, are very democracy savvy, no matter how blatantly it has failed in many countries and there's chaos. But obviously, that's the popular global narrative that there should be a democratic government in Afghanistan instead of an Islamic emirate. So it remains to be seen now if the Taliban would at all compromise on that particular narrative of an Islamic emirate and go for something which would be more conveniently acceptable to the civilized world or to the international community. Once that is decided, that will be point number one. That will be step number one when it comes to global legitimacy. Secondly, what
just
would be
to add
most
this,
important,
I beg your pardon. I beg you. I just have to add something in this on your first point that you made about the Islamic Emirate. When there were meetings going on in Doha, the Taliban made this very clear to the U.S. administration that we are going to implement Islamic Sharia law in Afghanistan. So I don't think that they might be considering any sort of a bit leverage on that demand, don't you think?
I agree with you, and that has been their stance ever since, which has created problems for them when it came to the bargaining chip or to strike a particular deal, if you want to say that, with the US and with the Afghan government. But like we've always seen, that when it comes to negotiation, you start from an extreme position, and you may hold a little bit of leverage which only you would know. So knowing the Taliban, knowing how they've been building this narrative, and looking at the way the people in Afghanistan, now we need to understand that the pace of these Taliban victories signifies something completely different. The pace at which they have conquered these provinces, provincial capitals, indicates that there was not significant civilian resistance, which means that these are not just military victories. These could be political victories as well. They maybe enjoyed local support. Now, I'd like to take you back a little bit to the reason why people were not supporting the Afghan defense forces in this situation. The reason being, if you see the reports of Sagar and Unama, the level of corruption that was basically proven on the Ghani government, and the way the billions and billions of dollars, almost $2 trillion flowing into Afghanistan, never made it to the people. Afghan military, every year, this is on the books, this is on the record, 1/3 of the Afghan army left every year. So basically, all these factors, they bundled up, which led to resentment against the Ghani government and inadvertently a kind of a tacit support for anyone else, which is why these victories by the Taliban could be seen as political victories as well. Now, getting back to the point, once they have created this scenario where they are now in a situation where they can bargain, they will need to understand that although their narrative, of course, resonated with some level of the population in Afghanistan, for them to be globally legitimate, for them to get help from the international community to rebuild Afghanistan from the war-torn situation it is in right now. So they would need global legitimacy. And for that, they might need to alter, you could say tweak their system a little bit. We don't know as yet if they'd be willing to do so. And if they won't be willing to do so, what it would do in the end. There's another very important point, which is that the responsibility on the Taliban regarding their claim that there will be no attacks on any other country from Afghan soil. Now, we all know that the Afghan Defense Forces, the Ghani administration, and everybody who supports them, which are not a lot, but they still exist, would be making sure, or the spoilers who would not want this to go through and would want this situation to go absolutely south for this Taliban, would create those situations where other countries might feel threatened. So the Taliban's responsibility, the Taliban's legitimacy does not just end with forming a government. It would need to be carried forward with responsibility and to ensure that the land and the soil of Afghanistan would not be used for attacks or terrorism abroad. And there can never be and if there is anything like that, they would take care of it and deal with it and punish those unequivocally. So these two things would eventually lead to an establishment of legitimacy for the Taliban government in Afghanistan.
Right, Moyed, just the last question that I'm going to throw at you is that do you think there is an imminent future threat of a fifth generation war that Afghanistan might face in the future?
I'd say I'd like to point that out. We're already in a fifth generation war in Afghanistan. Whatever is happening in, if you're referring to the fifth generation war, are we talking about the cyber space war?
We're not talking about the space war. We're talking about the misinformation war, the social media war, the information war.
Exactly. Cyberspace war. So basically, that's already on board. We're all seeing it. We saw the vicious campaign against Pakistan. We saw the vicious campaign against the Taliban, even how they're savages and how they are cutting throats. So basically, they were trying to portray to the global community because that's all what the Ghani government had. The only thing they had to throw in the face of the international community to hide their own incompetence, to hide the fact that they had ghost soldiers, to hide the fact that they had corrupted billions of dollars, was to create this straw man, this monster Taliban version, and on the sidelines, blame Pakistan for creating the situation because they had no other way of legitimizing their own existence, which they had completely failed the mission of rebuilding in Afghanistan, of creating an inclusive government where people felt safe, where people felt they could get justice, and where people felt they were taken care of when it comes to welfare. So this fifth generation warfare is going to get even more intense. We saw the entire campaign of hashtag Sanction Pakistan, majority of which, and I'm not surprised, came from accounts from India, and news outlets from Israel, from a particular faction in Afghanistan. I've mentioned this before. The Pakistan Army has mentioned this before. We know the orchestrator of this entire campaign. That plus the demonization of the Taliban, plus the legitimization of those who are originally spoilers in Afghanistan vis-a-vis India, those who have no apparent stake in Afghanistan, but could only play in the hands or play some role for those who want to destabilize the region. So this fifth generation
quick comment from you, Moyed. You mentioned India. A very quick comment from you. How is India feeling right now?
Oh, not so well, for many reasons. The first of which was that obviously New Delhi was all hunky-dory and very happy about the fact that they had an ally on Pakistan's western borders and they could maybe pressure Pakistan into a situation where Pakistan was up against two hostile borders at the same time. The Ghani government basically played in that hands. And now, to balance that out, they invested billions of rupees in Afghanistan as a compensation for their miscreant activities, which they planned in the future. But now that the horse that they bet on is gone, he's already fled the country, New Delhi will need to rethink its policies, to be very honest. New Delhi would need to understand that there is a way to coexist peacefully in this region. They will need to find that way instead of always, because if you look at India right now, it is not at peace with any of its neighbors. It is being accused of expansionism by virtually not just every other neighbor that it has, including China, including others, including Pakistan. But there's 1/3 of India right now is under insurgency. There are states fighting. There have been deaths in between Assam and the other state right next to it, Mizoram, 8 deaths in there over territorial issues. So basically, this is the mood Prime Minister Narendra Modi has created, this hostile environment, which now is spilling over into his own country and is already creating problems and for stability and security of the entire region. So New Delhi will need to now rethink its policies. It will need to figure out a way to mend ties, not just with Pakistan, but with other partners, with other bordering countries as well, because their strategy in Afghanistan to unsettle Pakistan and destabilize the region at the behest of somebody else or for their own good has failed miserably.
Well, I'm sure India must be watching the situation very keenly and enjoying some fantastic tea. Now, Moyed Jaffrey, senior journalist, thank you very much for joining us on Indus News. And the situation right now is, ladies and gentlemen, Afghan President Ashraf Ghani has left the country as the Taliban edges closer to taking full control, and Taliban militants have entered the capital of Kabul, and talks are underway between the group and the government. We will keep you updated with the Afghanistan story. We'll take a short break and come back with the news stories. Welcome back now. Moving on with the news stories. Kashmiris are observing India's Independence Day as Black Day in protest and rejection of its illegal occupation of the valley. The all-parties Hurriyat Conference and other parties have called for a complete strike in the territory. Black flags will be hoisted to protest India's gross human rights violations in the occupied valley. Protests have also been arranged by Sikh and other minorities in different countries, including France, Germany, the United Kingdom and Canada. Meanwhile, the protesting farmers in India are marking the day as a day of hope of liberation from Prime Minister Narendra Modi's rule. Whereas the United Nations NAGA Council has called for a 24-hour total shutdown in all Naga areas against the state-imposed celebrations. Now, the announcement came a day after the state authorities asked the villagers to hoist the Indian flag on August 15th. Now, for more on this, we are joined by Ravi Srivastava, a political analyst from Mumbai. Thank you very much for joining us, Ravi. Now, Ravi, India claims Kashmiris are happy under Indian annexation, but the Kashmiris are observing India's Independence Day as a Black Day. What message does it send to the world?
It's indeed very unfortunate. India is celebrating their 75th Independence Day today. And across the nation, there are celebrations. But it's really unfortunate that one province, one state of the country is having a Black Day. It has been a very sad incident. It happened 5th of August 2019 when the Article 370, Section 35A were abrogated and the entire Kashmir was put under a siege. There were people having miscellaneous problems over there. There was no network. The rights of people were not exercised. And another thing is that we are having a serious problem right at our state and country's capital, that there are thousands of farmers are sitting on a strike over there for last 9 months, and the government does not give any heed to their demands, and they do not take back their black laws.
Right. Also, Ravi, in addition to Kashmiris, there are separatist movements in almost 1/3 of India due to the central government's discriminatory and autocratic policies. Now, Ravi, the Citizenship Act and the NRC have made things even more clear for the Muslims across India. Do you believe the entire population of India feels they live in a free country?
The last 2 years, the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir has been suffering, and the government has put up a lieutenant governor over there, making it a union territory of the state. And I don't see that any positive changes have happened in Kashmir. Instead, there have been sufferings only. People are being killed, people are being jailed, many political leaders were put underground. All these things happened, a lot of atrocities and torture. And international media has been taking a cognizance of that, and they have been exercising the pressure on the government. But this autocratic government is not hearing, and they are just bulldozing their decisions over there. There has nothing positive has happened over there, nor any new industries have come up, nor any new university or hospitals have come up. There is no development what was promised 2 years before. The situation is grim, and every day we hear about the skirmishes with the terrorists and infiltrators, and all such things are happening in Kashmir. Yeah.
Right now, Ravi, thank you very much for talking to Indus News. Now, we appreciate it. Now, moving to Haiti, where the death toll from a powerful quake that struck the country on Saturday has risen to 724, with over 1,800 injured. Rescuers are making efforts to find survivors. The epicenter of the tremors was about 160 kilometers west of the center of the densely populated capital Port-au-Prince. Prime Minister Ariel Henry has declared a month-long state of emergency. The 7.2 magnitude earthquake has rekindled painful memories of the devastating 2010 tremor that killed an estimated 300,000 people. And the United States has reported over 212,000 new COVID-19 cases and nearly 1,400 deaths overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 4.3 million lives and infected over 207 million people so far. Details about the pandemic in this report.
The resurgence of the COVID-19 outbreaks has dragged nations back into sweeping restrictions. The United States is now averaging about 650 deaths a day, increasing more than 80% from 2 weeks ago. The rapid spreading of the Delta variant has wreaked havoc in the country, where record hospitalization of over 1,900 children was reported. Meanwhile, Australia has secured 1 million additional doses of the Pfizer vaccine from Poland. Prime Minister Scott Morrison says over half of the new vaccines will be directed to the state of New South Wales.
We need to see these case numbers go down, and we all have a part to play. I can't stress enough the seriousness of the current situation and my grave concerns that these case numbers will continue to escalate. Whilst we have put in additional controls, everyone needs to have a great sense of responsibility to follow the rules.
In Europe, Britain says all 16 and 17-year-olds will be offered their first COVID-19 vaccine dose by the 23rd of August. In Germany, the numbers have come down as the country reported 3 deaths and just about 4,700 cases overnight. Meanwhile, protesters marched across France against the health pass for a 5th consecutive week.
Health pass takes away the liberty of people of whether they want to be vaccinated or not, if they want to go left or right. It deprives them of everything, in fact. It deprives them of going to a hospital, those who are sick. It deprives them of everything. I find it inexplicable.
Russia's daily COVID-19 deaths hit a new record of 819 amid a slow vaccination rate. In South Korea, police mobilized hundreds of buses and set up dozens of checkpoints to fend off political rallies in defiance of warnings over the virus. Elsewhere, India has reported nearly 500 more deaths and over 36,000 new cases.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, coronavirus has claimed 67 more lives and over the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the death toll has risen to 24,406. The ministry registered a little over 3,700 infections overnight. The positivity rate was recorded below 7% for the first time in over 2 weeks. Pakistan has reported over 1,098,000 cases since the pandemic began. There are more than 87,000 active cases, including nearly 4,800 critical. And with that, we come to the end of this news bulletin. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.